It's a pleasure to have at the Brain Forum Dr. Andrea Pfeifer.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to start my presentation by thanking Dr. Walid Yufali for making this Brain Forum possible in Lausanne. I think it's a great honor for the region. And I'm also happy to announce that the second OECD workshop on dementia will in fact take place in Lausanne also this year, identifying our region as a center for neuroscience research and translation into effective medicines, and I'm very happy to be part of it. Turning the spotlight in brain research is right at the spot and points to the increasing interest by government, society, and patients on brain health and brain diseases. I will discuss today Alzheimer's disease, the most frequent neurodegenerative disease, and I will make a short review of where we stand in research and in medicine, applying this research, translating this research, but then I will take a strong view into the future and try to predict what will be available for us in the 21st century. Alzheimer is a terminal, devastating neurodegenerative disease. It's actually a very terrible human burden for the patients and the families. It destroys mind and senses. It destroys and changes personalities. And actually, it takes away independence and finally, dignity. Alzheimer is accounting for more than 70% of dementias today. Besides the human burden, Alzheimer is a very big economic burden for society and for the health systems in the world. And just to make a very important comment here, Alzheimer is not a disease of the developed world. It's actually a disease of the world with an equal incidence in the developing and in the developed world. As you can see here from this slide, we are today about 44 million patients, and this number will double already in 20 years, and it will triple to more than 130 million in 2050. Linked to that, there are approximately 200 billion spent today only in America to take care of these patients, and again, this amount will double in 20 years and triple to more than 1 trillion only for the care of American patients. This, in fact, gives you the dimension. However, there is hope. If there would be a medication which could delay the onset of a disease by 5 years, then this would halve the patient number and would halve the amount necessary to take care of these patients. However, there is no drug really today available which can stop the disease, and there is no new drug, even symptomatic drug, since 2003 for this disease. And between 1998 and 2011, 101 drugs failed in clinical development. This, of course, this situation brings easily a question forward, well, what needs to be changed in order to have a medication available in the next 10 years? There's an easy answer, which is actually not such an easy answer, in saying we need more research. I strongly believe we need also an improved environment to translate this research into effective medicine. On the other hand, I do believe that Alzheimer is under-researched, and NIH is, for example, only spending 450 million on Alzheimer, where there is more than almost 6 billion for cancer research. So more research is necessary, but also a better translation into medicines. Today, Alzheimer is diagnosed by the clinical assessment of cognitive decline, and the treatments available are of symptomatic nature. The field is working heavily on drugs which can modify the disease. What we mean by that is that the drugs can stop the progression of a disease, and also prevention medicine And in my opinion, the only way to make a real difference, to really stop the disease finally in the world, is to work on prevention. However, both disease-modifying treatments and prevention need early diagnosis, which we do not have today. The first diagnosis which potentially is available for early diagnostic is in fact imaging with, for example, tau, and I will come back to that because tau imaging might be an early diagnostic mean available in the future. Now, this picture should not shock you, but it identifies very clearly that Alzheimer is a very complex pathology and affects many cellular targets. The green lines, in fact, point to the targets, the cellular targets, which are utilized by the marketed products. They affect neurotransmission by overcoming some of the cholinergic deficiencies and also by blocking certain receptors, such as the glutamate receptor. The blue lines point to new strategies, innovative strategies, which have not been translated into medicines, but may be available in the future for such medicines. For example, to improve the cellular metabolism or to promote intrinsic mechanisms which can protect against or actually repair cellular damage. The most promising approaches, areas today, are marked in red, and they actually affect what we believe today the pathology of a disease and the major culprits involved of a pathology of a disease. So you have, for example, the aggregation of beta-amyloid, a protein which forms the plaque, or the aggregation of a tau which forms the tangles in the brain. You also have chronic inflammation. In fact, neuroinflammation becomes one of the important fields in neurodegenerative diseases, and you have antioxidants. Unfortunately, both anti-inflammatory drugs as well as antioxidants have not been very successful in clinical trials, probably due to the fact we do not get insufficient amounts into the brain. From recent clinical trial, it became very clear that two targets, namely A-beta and tau, and their combination are important clinical targets we should focus on. The next slide shows you, in fact, that clinical trials showed with at least 2 or now 3 drugs that affecting A-beta can slow down cognitive decline. You see on the right a clinical trial done with solanezumab, an antibody against A-beta. It's a analysis, a retro-analysis of 2 phase 3 clinical trials. And on the left, you see our own antibody partnered with Genentech, which is an exploratory phase 2 trial. And both trials actually show that you can reduce the cognitive decline by about 35%. The decline enhances over time, and it's the biggest in 18 months. And it also shows that the milder the population, the better is your effect on this cognitive decline. Just recently, about 10 days ago, there was another compound, another antibody against A-beta, aducanumab, which showed even a higher decrease by 80%. And it showed also a reduction of the plaques in the brain. And if, in fact, the therapeutic window can be established for this compound, then it's certainly another candidate for a race for first medication in Alzheimer's disease. As I mentioned to you before, really to conquer this disease, prevention would be the best mean. And I mentioned in my introductory slide that prevention today would require that we have early diagnostic, which we do not have. So in order to actually look and develop preventive drugs, the only possibility is to do clinical trials with genetic predisposed population, which with a high probability, up to 100%, get for sure the disease and they get it early. I'm showing you here 2 populations. a Colombian clan with about 5,000 members. The people have a partial mutation, and we all start to get symptoms with about 35 years. In fact, this was one of my most impacting experience when I was in New York and met Laura. Laura is a mother who has 5 children of his clan, and she has 4 children with Alzheimer's disease. Her husband left her, and she was left with 4 children basically taking care of while she doesn't have a disease. The second population, which is Down syndrome linked to the fact that there is chromosome 21, which carries the precursor of A-beta, also shows early accumulation of A-beta and early onset of a disease. Besides with potentially negative mutations, or in fact for sure negative mutation in terms of early development of a disease, there are also protective mutation, and was recently a very nice article in Nature which showed there is a mutation which actually is linked to a protection against the cognitive decline. So we actually can learn a lot from this genetic population, and in particular will allow us to study different stages of a disease early on and potentially to identify new biomarkers and new clinical endpoints. The next slide shows you, in fact, the 4 today ongoing clinical preventive trial. There is the API trial with our own drug, canuzumab, which looks into 300 of his partial mutated clan, and 2 of them carry the mutation, and 200 carry the mutation and 100 don't, because the people involved in the trial did not want to know if in fact they are exposed to the mutation or not. The second preventive trial is the DIAN trial, looking at different familial Alzheimer mutations, and it's actually tested with 3 different anti-amyloid drugs. Then there is the A4 trial, looking at old people with a positive A-beta signal in the brain, and again it's tested with soluzumab, an antibody against A-beta. And then the 4th clinical trial, which is actually looking into volunteers with 2 ApoE4 genes, which have, again, a much higher probability to get the disease. And this tests, in fact, the first anti-A-beta vaccine in a preventive trial, and also a BACE inhibitor. What you also see from this slide, very importantly, is that all of these 4 prevention trials are supported by a consortium consisting of NIH, of philanthropic foundations and individuals, and in fact company, which is an excellent model of how a private-public partnership can actually help to overcome one of these important obstacles of this century. Now going a bit further into the future, which is early diagnostic of Alzheimer. As you can see in the upper right panel, tau accumulation measured by an imaging agent T807 is in fact very nicely correlated with the plaque status of a disease. And if you can see on the lower panel, this tau accumulation is also very nicely correlated with the cognitive decline, which we see in Alzheimer patient, indicated here by the red bubble. This correlation of tau, this tau appearance, is much better correlated actually with the clinical symptoms than A-beta, and the data by Keith Johnson and others today indicate that A-beta might really trigger the accelerator of the tau pathology in Alzheimer, and the data really speak for Alzheimer being an A-beta-driven tau pathology, and for tau being an important target for diagnosis and therapy. Concerning tau therapy, and again looking in the future, we are just at the beginning. There is today 1 phase 3 clinical trial with an anti-tau aggregation molecule, and then there are 3 clinical trials in early stage phase 1, so 2 vaccines by Axon and by our own team, as well as an anti-aggregation inhibitor. So we are here just at the starting point, but in several years, the possibility to have tau available as a potential intervention treatment are coming up. So if I may look into the world of what is available today to treat Alzheimer, then clearly we have only symptomatic treatments. However, we are heavily working on disease modification, mainly targeting A-beta and tau, and there are many A-beta therapies in late-stage development and tau therapies in early development. We are also looking into prevention, and in particular looking here at A-beta-related antibodies and vaccine treatments. However, these treatments need also to be supported by looking at the psychiatric consequences such as depression and aggression. And what is definitely emerging are combination therapies, and there are in particular 2 combinations which are interesting, which is the combination of tau and A-beta and the combination of medication which affect A-beta from different pathways, so its formation, for example, by BACE inhibitors, as much as the reduction of plaques in the brain by antibodies and vaccination. So this slide shows you, and it's a schematic representation, what potentially one can expect in the future from combination therapy. The red line actually shows you the cognitive decline which we see in a normal patient. The blue line shows that there is a small improvement by a symptomatic treatment, whereas the yellow line represents a slowing down of a cognitive decline by a monotherapy with a modifying treatment. And the green line, in fact, shows you what we expect from a combination, whereas the yellow upper line would show that a preventive therapy would really prevent the cognitive decline which we see today. And this is, of course, the very future. In order to move research, translate research in effective medicine, we need not only university and industry, we need also the regulatory agencies on board. In fact, the regulatory agencies are a vital stakeholder, and we must collaborate with them to accelerate breakthrough therapies. In particular, we want their support to identify and develop surrogate markers. We want to have early access to medication for our patients through different means, such as conditional approval. We want to have earlier entry of such medications into the people by, for example, only referring to one clinical endpoint. We want to accelerate combination therapy and hope that they help us to accept early preclinical and clinical data. We want to have industry motivated by potentially higher exclusivity, and we want to harmonize the regulatory guidelines in America and in Europe. So, taking together, and I'm coming almost to the conclusion of my presentation, what is needed in the 21st century to not only accelerate research, find new research targets, but also to have effective medicines. And I think there are at least 6 means, and these means, in my view, are almost generic and apply to many of the neurodegenerative diseases, as we have heard already today on Huntington and Parkinson. So I think we need to focus on early stages of a disease. We need to use A-beta and tau for modifying targets, but we also need to exploit and explore new mechanisms, new strategies, which are basically supporting the neuronal survival, such as neurotrophic factors, or in fact thinking about stem cells. We need to identify different endpoints, more sensitive endpoints, which allow us to do better and faster clinical trials. We need to consider combination therapies. And we need to implement global registries, data sharing, and data analysis. And last but not least, we need partnerships between universities, industry, agencies and other stakeholders. And here again, I would like to thank the organizers of this Brain Forum to provide potentially such a platform where stakeholders can come together and bring research and medicine together. And I like to leave you with my favorite slide, which shows actually a series of self-portraits by an American painter, William Utermohlen, who actually was diagnosed with Alzheimer in 1995. As you can see here from these pictures, the Alzheimer disease takes away mind, senses, and finally the dignity of people. And I thank you very much.